Hey, thank you so much for buying my pack. Means a lot to me. A couple of your questions. So the first one, we will go over how to animate the sphere direction, but the second one was the time nodes. I wouldn't worry too much about those. Those, in my opinion, are more of if you want to bend the scene to just do some crazy things without having to do anything, because they're on a timer. So they'll fade in and out, fade in. Yeah, so I would say don't worry about those. But if we look into the pack here, we have these materials, and inside the animated materials, it actually goes over, like, so for instance, this is the regular textures. So they're not like the cube, the box, or the sphere. And they actually show this material collection parameter that actually is called dissolve animation. You will replace the dissolve amount with that and then animate them, as we're going to go over later. I'm going to hit no on that. And then I do have one, which is this guy right here, that actually has, there's a position material parameter collection and then a dissolve one. So we're going to go over on how to do those right now. The main one is, the first thing we want to do is go into our material parameter collection, right click, go to materials, and create a new one. We're going to call it test. You can name it however you like. Double click on that and create two, one for the scalar, one for the vector. The vector, we're going to call it the position. And in the scalar, we're going to call it dissolve. Why not? We can give it a value of 1 if you like, and we will hit save. The next thing we want to do is go into our blueprint. We have a sphere one. We're going to go ahead, Control D to make a duplicate, call it number 1, and we're going to go ahead and open it. In here, we want to go into the constructor script, and then we want to change this collector from sphere to our test. Otherwise, this isn't going to work. Hit compile, exit out of that. Alright, next thing we want to do is go into our materials, into our sphere direction material, and I'm going to choose this one right here, which is our test subject. So in here, we have a bunch of different things. So we have the radius, which controls the value of the dissolve. I have a texture on there. And then in here, we have a panner with a time node. So we're going to go ahead and delete those because we don't want it timed. And we're going to go ahead, I'm going to duplicate that because that's what we want. And in here, I'm going to change it to my test and then change it to dissolve. Replace this in the multiply. First step's done. The second one is this position. We want to change that to our test as well. We already named it that way, but it's good to double check. Now, what this will do, I'm going to go ahead and save, and I will be back when it's compiled. Okay, now we're back. Alright, so what this will do is inside of here, we have a field called use custom. So this will actually make it to where if we have it false, it will use, I guess, more of the position of the character to dissolve it. And if we have it true, it will actually take that blueprint that we just got, and wherever its position is, it will dissolve. Pretty cool, I know. Okay, so one thing I did forget to do, we do need that in the scene. Let's go ahead, let's position it. Sure, why not? Right there. We can always move it later. Okay. Moment of truth. Now we need to make a sequencer. So I already have one called dissolve already in the pack. We're going to add this to the level. And we're going to call it, I'm going to call it test. And here we want to grab a material parameter collection track, grab our test, and in here do the dissolve. So from here, we're going to give it like a crazy number. Yeah, sure. Why not? That much. Go to 60. Bring that down to 0. About 75. Put that down to 0 again. And then go to our last keyframe and enter that crazy amount that we just did. Make sure it loops. And of course it doesn't look as pretty on here because of all the fun stuff. Okay. One thing to note is since we created the test level sequencer, we want to make sure autoplay is on, and we want to make sure that it loops. Otherwise, you're not going to see anything. Alright, we're going to hit play. And voila! Yeah, of course you can adjust how it fades and everything. One thing we can also do, we can play around with these settings. So for instance, let's say we don't want the power too much. So we could change that to 1. Hit save. And let's see how that looks. Yeah, we could always lower the hardness too. And let's see what happens when we bump it up. And of course, it's like finding the medium of what exactly you want for your scene. Sure, it's not going to cooperate with me. Lower the power just a little. Let's see what that does. Oh, either way, it's your level, so you can create however you like. Let's try this amount. See what this does. Okay, and then let's get rid of that. And as I said, once we adjust this, because it has the stuff that we need for it, we hit play. Yeah. But yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it. So for your scene, you want to make sure you have a duplicate of this. Change the constructor to where it's test, has the position. Compile. Go into here, make a new parameter. Give it the values. No. Well, let's try this. Let's give this a value of 0. Well, yeah, so you want to create under material, go to parameter, add those two, and then go into your actual material afterwards. Replace the radius with your dissolve parameter. If you have a texture, you can use the texture. Make sure you have your position set to the test as well. Sure, we'll save. And then go ahead and make your sequencer, which is this one here, which is our test. If you're on Unreal Engine 5, that's what I'm using. Add your values as I've shown here. Make sure that your sequencer is set to auto loop. You can even adjust the play rate. So if you want it slower, let's try like 0.5. So not as harsh. You're able to actually see. Let's give it like a 0.25. Try that out. Pretty neat, pretty neat. All right, well, I hope that answers your question. Thank you again, like I said, for purchasing this pack, and you have a great rest of your night.